Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And a number of people have made me aware of the fact that Eddie Hall has torn his bicep. They've asked me to comment on it. And yeah, I just went and watched this whole video. Pretty interesting stuff. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft. And let's talk about this. Now, the thing is, people are going to say, Jason, you always talk about how unhealthy bodybuilding is. Why don't you talk about strength sports? Well, world's strongest man and top-level strongman is pretty unhealthy. And that would include people like Eddie Hall. And I kind of saw some things that concerned me in this video. Now, I get it. Before we get into what happened with his injury there, I get it, guys. Eddie is kind of coming out of the strongman thing. He's more or less retiring from all of it. He's still training. This guy is still ridiculously big, ridiculously strong, way higher level than any of us are ever going to be. And even after he's kind of quit doing strongman competition, he's still at a level we're not going to be at, and we all just have to accept that. But he's coming out of it, and he's trying to capitalize on it. And I get that. You've got to get your money. You've got to make your money. He's dedicated his whole life to this. And when he's going to go do a TV show, yeah, there's going to be some sensationalism, some ridiculous stuff in there, but he's hopefully using that to stockpile for the future. In other words, he's going to capitalize on that, do this TV show, make however much money he's going to get out of it. I don't know what it is. So that he can kind of secure his future going in, because this is what he has built his life around. I don't know what else he does outside of that, or if he has any other career, but probably not. And so this is his bread and butter. And as he's getting a little older, he may start having health issues coming up in the future. He needs to get himself locked in financially. And something like that can give him a good nest egg to do that, right? I mean, I totally get it. The only downside is that, the health issues associated with doing stuff like he's talking about on this show, because he's talking about all this different wrestling and just doing ridiculous stuff and eating challenges. And that's a big concern, because ultimately the wrestling is what tore his bicep. And we'll get to that in a minute. But the eating challenges, I mean, we have a guy like Eddie who's caused a lot of abuse to his body. His organs are probably not in the best of shape at this point. He's still at an enormous body weight. All right, this is not a man who's going to make it to old age. He's just not. And that's reality. That's not hating. That's not disparaging what he's done. That's just stating absolute facts. And so, at a certain point, you've got to look at something like this show and go, man, they really need to be doing stuff on the show that, will help him make money, but it's not going to kill him off quicker. And he's talking about he's doing eating challenges to where he has to throw up between. When you're at a point to where your body's been abused to the level that his has, and he's having to do 15 and 20,000 calorie eating challenges and actually vomit because of it, quite a few times, again, we're getting into some really, really bad areas. And that's bad enough for people who are already, if they were healthy or young or whatever. But Eddie's, again, over 400 pounds, heavy lifetime anabolic abuser. He just doesn't need that extra stress on his organs. And that's just my opinion. But like I said before, I get it. He's got to make his money. And if those eating challenges and eating 20,000 calories of ice cream and then having to puke it up is going to make him an extra $500,000, that he can help retire on and live comfortably for the remainder of his life. I mean, I get it. I'm just concerned of the health aspects. I'm concerned of his health aspects. And then we come over to the actual injury. All right, he got it doing some wrestling with a couple of people, and his arm got pulled back and it tore his bicep. And what has happened there is that it's a distal tear up here. I'm sorry, a proximal tear of the long head. Distal would be down here. I've torn my distal head before. I understand the procedure for that. But he tore it doing this stuff. And we come over to this whole issue that a lot of people who lift have to remember. And I think you guys would be surprised. When you get around the iron game a really, really long time, you're going to find that people who are very serious lifters, who have a lot of muscle, particularly people who've used fair amounts of gear, they don't often get hurt in the actual gym, right? That's what people need to remember. You very rarely get hurt doing your normal training, even doing maxes. And people need to understand that. The research on 1-rep maxes shows that they're relatively safe. right? When you do research studies on lifters, when they do studies on athletes in the lab, it is considered perfectly ethical to have them max out very frequently through a study under supervision to hit a true 1 rep max to test their strength. It's a standard testing protocol in exercise science for athletes and lifters and stuff when you're assessing changes in strength, because 1 rep maxes are the best way to determine maximum strength, right? There is no other way. People will make that argument of, well, there's different forms of strength. No, not really. That's how we measure strength. How much weight can you lift on a given exercise? That is how you measure strength. If you understand what the word strength means, then it makes sense. If you don't understand what the word strength means, then it might not. But that's how we measure it. These things are safe. Like heavy training, all things considered, is relatively safe. People tend to get hurt from overuse injuries in the gym more than anything else, but not from necessarily lifting really heavy or even sometimes some off form. That actually relatively rarely, for someone who has lifting experience, that rarely hurts you. Very, very rarely. It's overuse injuries. But what happens a lot, if you observe over the years, you've been in the game as long as I have, you find most people get hurt showing off outside of their training. Right? When they're in an environment to where they're no longer in their comfort zone and doing things that a lot of younger guys, if you're 16 years old, you get away with doing in wrestling and goofing off and doing different things, and you're just fine because you're not strong. In other words, there aren't 16-year-olds who have way fat-free mass indexes above 27. All right? We're talking about usually guys who've used a fair amount of gear. They're carrying a lot of muscle mass. They have muscles capable of generating a lot of force. When you start putting those things into awkward situations that are outside of your normal different movement patterns, and people say, well, strongmen are really varied. Well, they are to a certain threshold, but they don't stretch muscles at bizarre, unusual angles and then apply maximum force with their muscles, right? And that's a big difference. They're in an environment where they can control everything that they do. They can grab that stone however they want. They can move that object however they want, and they get a certain practice in doing those things, right? They're used to lifting these awkward objects. They're not necessarily used to grappling or repelling. And like I've known of a guy who's showing off with his son and his friends. They're out playing. He did some jump off of a skateboard or whatever, and he landed on the ground into a push-up on the ground and fell off a skateboard. He tore a tricep off the bone. And I'm talking about a guy who could bench 400 pounds. But when he hit the ground the wrong way and caught himself goofing off, playing around as a slightly older guy, tricep ripped right off the bone. It happens. Because, again, he was doing physical stuff that was showing off, goofing off with a different dynamic component, and these things happen. Callum Von Mosier, again, stupid doing cheat curl, two-person cheat curl. Well, there's something else besides his own motor control and his own body that could control the forces applied on his body. In other words, the other guy let him go too soon. Takes way more than his tendon can handle, and his bicep contracted against it and it ripped. Same thing, he went to rappel down a cliff as a guy who's not athletic, has the leg strength from all the drug abuse he did. Ripped a quad tendon. Same thing with Eddie Hall here. Again, the guy might be brutally strong with brutally strong tendons. I can assure you Eddie's tendons are stronger than mine. They're stronger than yours, right? They are. They're stronger because of his years of training and everything else. His tendons are probably thicker and stronger than ours. But if you put them at the wrong angle, Eddie's shoulders, Eddie's biceps, all of that are stronger than ours also. You put him into a stretch angle and his weight gets pushed against someone else and he catches himself wrestling or whatever, and what happened? The muscle ripped. Right? And that's what people who lift really seriously, or you have a lot of strength, or especially if you've abused gear, you've got to factor that in. When you start goofing off and doing moderate risk physical activities, you are risking actually ripping crap off the bone. And that's just reality. And it's not because you're weaker or more fragile than other people. It's because you are way stronger than other people. You're capable of physically doing damage to your body during horseplay if you just push too hard involuntarily. And you have to be aware of those things. And this is why, I tell people if your career very seriously revolves around your strength, your performance, your physique, doing silly goof-off physical activities outside of a structured training environment are probably not a good idea. They might be fun, but save the horseplay and stuff like that for people who aren't physically capable of ripping their own bodies apart, right? You don't take those sort of risks. It's silly. It's not worth it. In this case, this was done for professionally, but it was horseplay that he was doing as part of a larger financial endeavor. Sure enough, ripped his muscle. And what are the doctor telling him? That because it looks like it's not, the tendon didn't tear, it looks like it's the long head, the proximal end of the long head of the bicep, the muscle itself has torn. And he's telling him that they're going to look at it further, obviously, but he might say because of the rehab and stuff involved in the complications of a procedure like that, and since he can still function and his tendons are all still attached and the short head is fully attached and he has movement and strength, that he's going to probably recommend that he not undergo surgery. He's just going to have to deal with a misshapen bicep and a torn head up there, and it'll heal a little over time, but that in his situation, repairing it will probably be worse in the long term to his actual training and lifting than if they just leave it. So that's pretty interesting. So in his case, they're most likely not going to do surgeries. And the doctor's saying it's possible, but we need to assess it further. But I'm going to lean in the direction of saying it might not be the right choice for you at all to even get it repaired. So he's just going to have to deal with that misshapen bicep unless he wants to go through that process and then a very, very long rehab and downtime from training. Because as of right now, he can still load it, underload, and train and everything else. And that's just kind of the price you pay when you become a serious lifter and you engage in horseplay. These risks happen, and I've seen it happen. We've all seen it happen if you've been in the game a while. Save that stuff for the kids. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.